Mr. R wanted us to learn, and I, Breanna Tierney and Tierney Murphy, from his 4th period chemistry, have learned to a B level the following concepts from the first 12 chapters of our chemistry book. This is not an oh, that's your turn.
This is not an inclusive list, but my selection of concepts from each chapter that we will remember.
Okay, so starting off chapter 1, which is Intro to Chemistry, we learned the scientific method is problem, hypothesis, experiment, and then result and conclusion. And then chapter 2 is Matter and Change, and we learned that pure substance is substances that are made of only one type of atom or molecule and completely of carbon. Chapter 3 we learned scientific measurement, and that is the periodic table and we learned why the periodic table is useful, which is because it keeps the elements organized and easy to find. Chapter 4 was atomic structure, so we learned that accuracy is like hitting a dart on a board and getting in the right spot every time. And then precision is hitting the same spot every time. Chapter 5, electrons and atoms, we learned what causes atomic emission spectra is the atoms absorbing energy, causing the electrons to lose energy by emitting light when moving back down to a lower energy level. And finally, we learned in chapter 6, the periodic table, we learned that the 3 types of elements are solids, liquids, and gases, as well as a periodic table song to help us learn the elements.
Okay, and then on to chapter 7, ionic and metallic bonding, we learned what valence electrons were, and they're electrons on the very outer orbit of an atom. In chapter 8, covalent bonding, we learned about polar molecules and how one side can be slightly more positive or slightly more negative according to how the atoms bond. Chapter 9, chemical names and formulas, we learned cations and anions. Cation is a positive ion, and an anion is a negative ion. In chapter 10, chemical quantities, we learned the 3 ways to measure matter: count, weight and mass, and volume. In chapter 11, we went over chemical reactions, and skeleton equations is what stuck best, and that's a chemical equation that does not indicate the relative of the reactants, or a relative amount of the reactant. And then we ended in chapter 12, stoichiometry, and we learned about conversion factors and mole ratios.
Yay!